In this lesson, we're going to be putting all four components of historical thinking together. But to start out, we're going to focus on this last one that we haven't talked about, which is corroboration. Today's learning targets are: I can cite textual evidence to support my analysis, and I can evaluate an author's claims by corroborating or challenging them with other information. So you'll know you've done this successfully at the end of this lesson if you can use multiple sources to explain what happened in the lunchroom. Now, this may be a word you haven't heard before, so let's go over a definition of it. So corroboration is the act of comparing pieces of evidence to see where they agree or disagree. So in the real world, this happens in law all the time with investigators or in a courtroom, but you're trying to listen to different pieces of evidence or look at different pieces of evidence to see where stories agree or disagree. That way you can find out the truth, just like you're doing in this lunchroom fight. And the same thing happens in history as well when someone's trying to determine what happened at a historical event. Now we're going to take a look at some of the questions to ask when you're trying to corroborate evidence. So the first is, what do other documents say? Maybe you can find a private journal of the person or a speech they made, or can you find other documents from that same time period, or maybe a letter written to someone else that would help you find more evidence. Once you've done that, do the documents agree or disagree? So try to figure out where there's the similarities and differences in these different types of evidence. Think about what other documents may clarify our understanding. So is there anything else you might try to find, maybe some data that would go with it, or look through other sources to find evidence that backs up what the source you're looking at says. And then the last one is, what is the point of view of the author and what might their bias be? So going back to what we talked about with reliability, what limitations would this source have? Could there be any bias where they might not be telling the entire truth? So now we're going to take a look at an example of corroboration. So on the night before the big game between your school's team, the Panthers, and your biggest rival, the Bears locker room was vandalized. Many of the players from the Bears accused members of your team of committing the vandalism. The Panthers say that they couldn't have vandalized the locker room because they were all out for pizza when the locker room was raided. So we have two different claims in this reading here. So first of all, the Bears are accusing members of your team of committing the vandalism. But the Panthers have a different story. They say they couldn't have done it because they were all out for pizza when the locker room got vandalized. So there's two different things here, two different claims that are going on. So the Bears think the Panthers did it, the Panthers saying they weren't the ones. So in order to figure out what really happened, we would try to gain some evidence about this event. So account A is a statement by the Panthers quarterback's older sister saying that she drove them to the pizza place on the night the locker room was vandalized. So her piece of evidence backs up what the Panthers are saying because she is corroborating that. So it's agreeing with their statement over here. So when we think about bias, though, she is one of the Panthers' older sisters. So there could be some reason for bias there. Maybe she doesn't want to get her brother in trouble. So that's something we're going to have to consider as we look at other evidence. Account B says it's a statement from the Bears running back saying that he saw the Panthers at the pizza place the night the locker room was vandalized. So he is also agreeing with what the Panthers players are saying, and he's someone on the opposite team. So this really gives you a good indication that he's telling the truth because he's one of the Bears players. So he doesn't have a reason to lie to try to cover for them. If anything, he might want to try to make them look bad. So the fact that he's also agreeing makes it pretty obvious that they weren't here to do this vandalism. So what you're going to be doing today is putting all these pieces together and looking at evidence from multiple perspectives. So there's a little bit more background information here at the top, and then you're going to go through and look at sources from Justin, Max, some of their friends, some adults, and really try to figure out what happened at this event. Down here, you're going to answer these questions, looking at different context, have 2 quotes for each box. So you'll want to figure out who said it, and then also explain why the source is reliable or not. So go back if you need it to the reliability lesson to remember how to do that. But you're going to want to try to put all these pieces together. And now you've got even more evidence to try to corroborate with each other to figure out what happened.